Alright guys, so I'm set out in my studio shed area that I have. A tough shed as a studio. It's going to be probably a tiny bit louder because we're outside in the space. To get light, I have to be by the door. I want to show you, this is the type of cardboard or mat board you could buy for a couple bucks. It's cardboard, but it's extra. It comes in a big sheet like this, but it's actually thinner and more dense and more of a specific kind of pressed. It doesn't have corrugation on the inside of it. So this would work a lot better, or mat board is the same for this project because you can have more control when you're trying to cut through it when it's thinner. When I've made this here, I made it in pieces and then glued it together and then covered it with it's just basically drywall mud, or you could use also shrink-free, all-purpose kind of putty. If you didn't have that, it's basically like this type of stuff too. This is wood filler. This is more expensive than the regular like all-purpose putty. Drywall mud comes in really big things, so you probably don't want to buy that. You could do though. You can build up the surface and it dries. It's pretty hard. It's kind of like different type of textures you can get on it, like a wall, smoother. This one's really smooth over here. Not smooth. I have like a texture going on. If I wanted it to get really smooth, I could do this and then I would sand it down, which I'll show you guys how that would look in a little bit. But first you have to build this thing out of mat board, and I'm going to show you some building methodologies, okay? Here's a piece that I want to show you. I measured out 2-inch sections of rectangle, 2 inches wide by, I think it was, 4 inches? Yeah, 4 inches long, so 2 to 4. And I had it on a big piece like this. I cut it out here too. And instead of cutting all the way through the board, I actually cut part of the way through it. You can see right here how it's hinging. The reason why I did that is because it allowed me to go in and make a long rectangular box like that without having to glue every section together. And when I'm doing this, I can get something that's really square by measuring very carefully, but also I can make this really square by the piece that I put inside of this to help hold it into a square shape on the end. It's 2 by 2 by 2 square, so it doesn't get wonky and funny. Also, when I'm going to build with it, I can use some tape and hold it in place when I put the glue down and put glue on it. So I'll show you that. So you may want to have some tape. You don't have to. You definitely need this. You're going to need an Exacto knife or some type of utility knife. There's all different versions of them that you can buy. That one works really well because you can kind of control it like a pencil a bit more. But you can also use the more traditional like Stanley utility knives. This brand's been around for eons, with a bigger blade. This one, maybe when you control, it's harder to control in certain ways, but you can still control it. You're going to want to also have a ruler, preferably metal, if you want to have a straight edge that you're cutting against, or some kind of piece of something that's firm enough to handle the blade going up against it. Okay? When you're marking things off, if you have a project that's not like rectilinear, rectangular, then you don't have to have a straight edge because you can do it as close as you can freehand. But when you're measuring things off, you need to make sure your pencil's really sharp. So keep that pencil sharpener handy to get really sharp pencils, because you want a really fine line when you mark it. Okay. If you can see here, I used ink to show you the lines, but the problem with doing that is that's a really fat line that has a lot of width to it. If you can see, that can throw off my measurements quite a bit. So I'm really better off to have a really fine line. And what I'm going to do now is mark off 2 inches, 1, 2, right there, in multiple spots, keeping it square to the edge. I have that edge already squared up. I'm going to draw a line down between the 2 marks. If you had a really long thing, you would need to do the same thing. Mark it from the edge in multiple spots to keep it square. Okay, so that's 2 inches. There on that. I'm going to check it real quick. Yep. Let's see. Check it in multiple spots. Looks like it. I like these gridded rulers that are clear because you can use them very effectively to check things. And then on that line, I'm going to go another 2 inches over from the edge because I want to get a 2 by 2 square of this material to use for putting on the end of that big rectangle to show you, because I want to just have another box basically. I'm making a simple shape. There's 1, 2 inches right there, and I'm going to do it on the other side as well so I can get a straight line that's square. Square means the edges are each parallel. So parallel here to here. Let's see, parallel here to here and here to here. That's what we're talking about when we're saying square. Okay, so there's 2 inches right there, and I'm going to do it again. 2 inches up. There it is. On the very end. A really fine pencil line helps you keep it really accurate. And I'm marking it on a really small thing here, but you can see out of the screen, probably not so well. It's small because the mat board's pretty small. There it is. You want it to be like that. You can, if you're marking, you can also, I want to show you, mark like this. Let's see. I'll show you with a felt pen. You don't use felt pen because it's so thick. But you can mark with a shape like that at the exact line. It'll help you be more accurate because you know exactly where the 2 inches is. But if you see the difference between this line that I just made with a 2H pencil and that line, see how it could throw you off quite a lot because it's actually got quite a lot of a thickness to the felt pen. So that's what I keep talking about when I'm saying use a sharp pencil. You're going to want to cut into what they call the waste material. What's waste material? Well, it's the part you don't need that you haven't measured out yet. So in this one, this is the part right here that I'm saving, right? So I want to cut away from that by putting the ruler onto the part that I want to keep. Okay? I'm lining it up carefully. I like to do the whole line because you could do it by just making little hash marks and then cutting, but when I do the whole line with a pencil, it helps me really check the accuracy, and then when I go to line it up again, I can really see what I'm doing there. This time, I'm going to cut all the way through it. I'm not going to just kind of cut it. And you need a lot of light because you need to know if you're really lined up properly. And you want it to be really accurate so you don't waste your material. I'm kind of having a problem because I have a little too much shadow in this shed. A little more overhead light would be good. Okay, so I have that lined up really well right there. And I'll have to do it in multiple passes see I just got off a little. That's why I'm cutting into the waist, because I just started cutting. And once you do it one cut wrong, into the wrong direction, it starts messing you up quite a bit. So that's why you want to cut into the waist. You can see I accidentally cut over here, and I cut off at a weird angle over there too. So I'm going to have to fix it. That's why we cut into the waist, because you get something funny sometimes. Once you get it pretty close through, a lot of times, then you come back in here, cut it off. It looks like maybe my Exacto blade is getting a tiny bit dull. So these aren't made to be used forever. You want to change them out every so often. Looks like I need to change it out. So for this example, I'll probably switch to using my utility knife here for a second. It has a sharper blade. So I'm going to have to fix that. I got off a little bit there. That's okay. It's a good example for you guys to have to figure out how to fix things. Looks like my camera is lagging a little, seriously. Slow down here for you. And I'm going to go in there and just carefully, I'm holding really tight so I can make sure it doesn't shift on the ruler. And there you go. That's that line. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. You can check it there. Looks pretty good. Getting a lot of lagging here. I'm sorry, guys. My processing speed might be a little slow there. So we're looking good on that piece. This piece got a little off, but it doesn't matter. It's the waist piece. So waiting for that to catch up. I'm gonna do the same thing. If you notice, I put that X on there. Can you see it? A little bit, maybe. The X there so that I know this is the piece I don't want to cut into. Okay? So I have that there. I can get set up without, that way when I get set up, I don't cut into the piece that I'm trying to save. So I'm going to do the same thing over again here. See if I can show you guys this clearly. Get a little closer. Getting that set up. This is the piece I don't want to cut. I'm cutting into the waist, which means I'm putting my ruler on the piece I want to save. That way I can't ruin it as easily. I'm going to push down really hard and go through it multiple times. You're not going to want to cut on your kitchen counter or your table, obviously, so you're going to want to get something, not cardboard to cut on, but a cutting board or something. They make self-healing cutting mats. This is just a piece of plywood that I use to draw on that I'm cutting on. Okay. And that will be what I can use to put inside here. And I'm going to have to check it, but it looks like I might have gotten something slightly off. Square, or the measurement off, maybe, because it should be able to slip in a tiny bit easier, but it's pretty close. I might have to shave it down a little bit, but I don't mind actually putting it on the end like an end cap, either to it. But there you go. That'll give me a piece that I can put right on there. And when I go into glue it, I'll show you, I'm going to have to glue it really carefully. And then when I put the putty on there, the all-purpose joint compound, or, shrink-free putty, whatever you end up using, there's different ones I list you can have. You can fill in the little gaps around the edge and make it really, really smooth if you want. So that's that one. I'm going to go ahead and set up a hot glue gun and then show you how I'm going to glue it all together. And then we'll make a box and then go on from there. Okay, guys? So I'm going to pause it for a second for that reason. Cut one more piece on the other side. And I was cutting, I wanted to show you guys something before I glue. I just want to make clear to you guys, when you're cutting, this is the square I'm cutting, this is all the waste. You're going to probably lose some material every now and then, like you'll mess it up and it's okay. That's why you want to buy more than you need. Also, when I'm cutting, I'm lining it up really carefully by looking down and measuring multiple times before I cut. So there's a phrase that's called measure twice, cut once in building trades. That's so that you make sure it's really accurate in your measurement before you go and do your cut. Well, it's the same thing here. You want to make sure you're accurate before you go and cut it by double checking yourself. Now, also, this thing is really sharp. Utility knives are pretty intense knives. They have razor edge to them. So when you're cutting, you need to cut. If you cut towards yourself, you need to. That's fine. You can cut you need to make sure the blade is down all the way into the material and pushing into it downward, not towards yourself like this in any way. You also need to make sure your hands are out of the path of the blade. So when I'm holding onto my ruler, I don't want my thumb to be out here like this, like I'm cutting. See how my thumb is over here? If I was cutting, I don't want my fingers to be in the path of the blade and my thumb, because if I slip, I'm going to hurt myself. So I line it up really carefully on that edge, and then I push really hard down on my ruler, standing up like that, and see where my thumb is? You can't see my thumb from that angle, but it's back. If I was cutting on this side, I have it back over away from the ruler, out of the path of the blade. So I don't ever cut with my hand in the path of the blade. I have it way out of the way. So that way I can't damage myself in any way. So you gotta be really careful and have good safety protocol. Change your safety protocol because if you do, that's when you get hurt in a shop when you're using tools and saws and stuff. So always cut with your hands and your body out of the path of any blade. Okay. So you get that nicely lined up. Careful. One eye closed. I haven't said this yet, but you want to have one eye closed so you're looking at it down with one eye, because your eyes, if you held your finger out in front of your face and closed your left eye, right eye, back and forth, you would get your finger kind of jumping like this. It's because you have binocular vision. So it's slightly different. Your brain puts together the two eyes into one vision. And it's what allows you to see depth and, catch balls in the air instead of getting hit in the face and things like that. But it's not great for measuring because it throws off just by a little bit, and we're dealing with only 2 inches of space. So you want to close one eye when you're looking down and measuring and doing stuff like this. So you're only looking from one vantage point. And then you're going to cut. You can cut with both eyes open. I just mean when you're measuring and looking. You're going to go through in multiple passes. Okay? Holding it firm. If you had a mat cutter, like they do at, different mat framing stores, it's the same way. You don't do it in one pass. You do it in multiple passes. That's why you cut into the waste, because you're going to have extra material that gets damaged. And there you are. You have a second square, just like the first one. It has a little blip right there. You can clean up that stuff if you need to. But they're both pretty close. Dead on exactly the same. That one looks like it has a little problem. So we might need to fix it. Check the square on it. It's off just by a little bit. So we'll just adjust it right there. Get them the same. And then we can use those for both sides of the box. So you can see based on, this is just one beginning stage making a box here really accurately. And this is in scale, 1/2 inch equals, on the drawing equals an inch here, or you could do 1 inch on the drawing equals an inch here. So this would be 2 inches by 2 inches by 4. That would be, a foot in real life, so 2 feet by 4 feet. That's the kind of thinking you want to have. This is the model. You can see that it takes time to do this. You don't want to rush it and wait to the last minute. You have quite a bit of time, class time, even though I know you're at home. The time you should spend in the class to work on this. So you need to start earlier, not wait till the night before to try to do all this. Otherwise, you won't have a chance to finish it off nicely, to glue it up. It'll look like crap, basically. So you want to really spend some time measuring and keeping things nice and clean and have high quality craftsmanship. So I'm going to get out my glue gun and I'll glue this together and show you after I glue it how we can clean up the edges with your blade. You can kind of cut off the extra glue, and then after that you get it, wait till it dries, fully cools and is stiff and hard, and then you can putty it and do things like that at the very end. And I think that'll kind of get you through the idea of how to build with the mat board. When you get into different shapes that are more curvilinear, you can't really make them 3D. You could do like flat shapes like that, but it's a lot harder. You kind of have to think in, so if you want it to be, if you wanted something like this, right? Can you see that? I want something crazy like that. Instead of like doing it like that, you gotta actually think of it more like this. In angles, and then if you did that, you could actually make this 3D. Because it's a planar material, this is a plane in space. Just like if you're making out of plywood or drywall sheets or any kind of 2x4 or sheets of metal, it has to be geometric for it to work. Metal is kind of different because you can bend and shape it with heat and stuff, but overall you're talking about you really need to have it be geometric. So this is a big design constraint that you have to work with planes and geometry in that way. So your idea, however awesome it is, needs to fit into this, and so this constraint will help form and change and shape your idea as well, and that's actually a good thing in art making because we always have to deal with constraints. Even if we had $1 million budgets and every tool under the sun and an army of people to help us, we could still only do certain things with our time, energy, ability, the site, all that type of stuff. So there's always constraints, and that's part of making good art. If you had everything, it'd be too hard to figure out what to do. So even if you get a lot of freedom on a project, it's good to give yourself some constraints. And in this one, you have a lot of freedom, but you have the constraints of it being, something that's designed for public. You have to use planar material, and you're having to do it to scale. So I'm going to get my hot glue gun out, and then we can start to glue this up together. So I'm going to get my glue gun all set up, and also I'm going to show you about using a sure form on something. And I'm going to use a basic palette knife for my puttying, but I'll show you some other knives you could do, especially if you're doing a bigger project with putty knives and stuff. But I'm going to do that in a third video. So this one will conclude the cutting, and then the next one will be about gluing and finishing it off with the mud. So I'll see you in another video real soon.